Secretary, can you please start the meeting?
Vice Chair, the meeting's now being recorded.
Thank you. The meeting is now, so I would like to call the regular meeting of August 26, 2024 to order, and Commissioner Wu is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Put your right hand over your heart, face the flag, and let's begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. Before we begin, I would like to remind my fellow commissioners to turn your microphones on when speaking and off when not speaking. And when speaking, please place the microphone about 4 inches away from you. Thank you. Members of the public may attend Planning Commission meetings in person or virtually via Zoom. And I now invite the Commission Secretary to describe the way the public can access and participate in this meeting.
This meeting is being live streamed via our portal at www.sana-ana.primegov.com/public/portal and to YouTube at www.youtube.com/City of Santa Ana videos. If you would like to provide public comment, you may do so in the following ways. Join the meeting via Zoom, enter meeting ID number 816-550-35425. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, select the hand icon to let us know you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the name you entered. You can also join the meeting by calling 669-900-6833. Enter meeting ID number 816-5503-5425. When the item that you would like to comment on is being discussed, press 9 to let us know you would like to speak. You will be called upon by the last 3 digits of your phone number. After you're called upon, you may press 6 to unmute yourself. For those who are attending this meeting in person and would like to provide public comment, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it into the secretary. All speakers will have 3 minutes to speak. I will alert you when your time is up.
Thank you. Moving on to public comments on non-agenda or non-public hearing items. Secretary, does anyone wish to speak?
If you're attending this meeting in person and would like to comment on non-agenda or non-public hearing items, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it into the secretary. If you're participating via Zoom and would like to comment on non-agenda or non-public hearing items, please select the hand icon and unmute yourself. If you're calling in and would like to comment on non-agenda or non-public hearing items, please dial 9 and then 6 to unmute yourself. Vice Chair, we do not have any speakers.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar.
I'd like to move the consent calendar A and B.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Secretary, please call for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Benninger,
Aye.
Commissioner Escamilla,
Aye.
Commissioner Leo,
Aye.
Commissioner Pham,
Aye.
Commissioner Wu,
Aye.
Vice Chair Ramos,
Aye.
Chair Oliva. Motion approved by majority vote with Chair Oliva absent.
Thank you. This concludes the consent calendar. Now we're moving on to administrative matters. This is the time and place for general plan consistency finding for the sale of successor agency property to the City of Santa Ana located at 3rd Street and Main Street. Staff from the Community Development Agency will provide a short presentation.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioners, I'm Michael Garcia. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Santa Ana. And the item for the commission tonight is the sale of a property between the successor agency of the former redevelopment agency and the City of Santa Ana. The property is located at the southwest corner of 3rd and Main and consists of 27,000 square feet, and it's used for, and in its current existing condition, for 60 parking spaces that are utilized by the adjacent property to the south. So the government code requires whenever public entity sells or buys or even leases property, they should look at doing a finding of conformity with the general plan. And so for those of you who have been by the site, the edges of the property were improved many years ago with wrought iron and decorative cinder block. And it also provides for an access, let me go back to this one, from Second Street and access through an easement to get into the building. So it's got some easements as well on the property that are currently in place with the Builders Exchange property, which is a historic property within the city and on our historic list of properties. And what it entails is trying to sell the property from the successor agency to the city will allow the city to maintain the existing maintenance agreement as well as the easement with that adjacent property owner for use of parking. It also could be explored in the future by the city if they wanted to add an additional parking amenity to the downtown. It's got a similar footprint. It's a little bit larger than Fifth and Main, which is a 7-floor parking garage at the southwest corner of Fifth and Main. So if it were to be developed, it might be developed in maybe a public-private partnership directly with the Builders Exchange property owners and the city to do a parking amenity to add additional parking spaces in the downtown. The beauty about this property is that it helps the city not only to maintain those two agreements, but to be in conformance with the mobility element of the city's general plan. Policy M-4.7. So staff tonight is recommending approval of the resolution finding that the sale of this property is in conformance with the general plan. And we would then, based on the recommendation of the Planning Commission, move it on to the City Council at the September 17th City Council meeting. And I'm open for any questions from the commissioners or the vice chair.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and take questions. I'm going to start on this side. Commissioner Wu, do you have any questions?
Mike, is this a process that we go through with the successor agency being the city, which a redevelopment is no longer, is a process that we go through? We have not set any intentions of what to do with it. That's another process. Am I right?
That's correct. If it were to stay in its existing condition, the successor agency has already approved the appraisal process that previously happened. They basically have approved the sales amount, and the successor agency would then forward this, if it's approved tonight and then approved by the city council in a joint successor agency city council process on September 17th, it would be forwarded to the oversight board. And the oversight board is trying to make sure all assets from the former redevelopment agency are disposed of. And this meets the long-range property management plan that was put in place following dissolution of the redevelopment agency.
So in the immediate future, we're maintaining as a parking lot, taking care of the sidewalk and all that with
That's
the whole
correct.
city property, right?
That's correct.
So should we want to designate it for something else, that goes later for discussion, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and so far, the city council has no other intention.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. Commissioner Pham, do you have any questions for staff?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Are there any major improvements we're planning to do on the property once it's in possession?
No plans.
So the parking lot and the current use is acceptable?
That's correct.
That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Leo?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Escamilla?
Yeah, just a quick one. So it's within the SD 84 zone, but what's the subzone on this particular parcel? Sorry, just the map's a little small on my phone.
I don't know that.
Okay, I'm just asking for like level of intensity of potential future use. Not that it has any bearing on this, I was just kind of curious. And then I guess overall, even though there's no plans, I think we definitely, I don't know, if we're doing parking, there should be some rooftop amenities. Now, I know this is like probably pretty early on for the discussion, but, anything where you actually activate that rooftop where a lot of people like to go and becomes kind of an attractive nuisance, that we can actually kind of utilize that top space for not quite maybe a 7-story structure, but whatever ends up happening there. Always a better use of space. And also, kind of knowing this particular site, having, I think it was a 2-story commercial structure, very similar to the Builders Exchange building that was on this site previously. So, just having some sort of retail facade or activation where it's not just necessarily all parking along that ground level, I think is just important to discuss now rather than, once the designs are already kind of finalized. Not, again, to say that anything is planned specifically, but knowing that it's being transferred, those thoughts should be kind of part of the future discussion. That's all I got.
Thank you. Commissioner Benninger?
I like the idea of future uses for it. I think there's lots of potential. I've got to ask this question. We're not talking about any exchange of money here, correct?
That's correct. Well, not between the Builders Exchange property owner. There is an acquisition by the city to the successor agency. The sales proceeds from that acquisition will be distributed amongst all of the taxing entities within that downtown tax rate area. So there will be an acquisition from the city to the successor agency, but between no other entities, no other exchange. Sorry for that clarification.
As long as you didn't want to sell me snake oil, we're okay. Do you know what the idea, what that amount will be?
It is $190,000.
Very good, not bad for that location. All set, I'm done, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, seeing none. Commissioner Wu?
Got a motion. I'd like to adopt a resolution finding the sale of the successor agency property to the city of Santa Ana that's located on 3rd and Main Street, APN 398-601-02. Consistent with the general plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. Is there a second?
I'll go in a second.
Thank you, Commissioner Escamilla. Secretary, can you please call for a roll call vote?
Commissioner Benninger?
Aye.
Commissioner Escamilla?
Aye.
Commissioner Leo?
Aye.
Commissioner Pham?
Aye.
Commissioner Wu?
Aye.
Vice Chair Ramos?
Aye.
Chair Oliva? Motion approved by majority vote with Chair Oliva absent.
Thank you. This concludes administrative matters. Moving on to the public hearings. I will now review the process for the public hearing so that everyone knows what to expect. Staff will provide a presentation and answer questions from the commission. The public hearing will be opened. The applicant will be given the opportunity to speak, limited to 15 minutes. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to comment, limited to 3 minutes. The applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to comments made by the public, limited to 5 minutes. The public hearing will be closed. Discussion will return to the commission with formal action taken to approve, deny, or continue review of the application. Please consider the following suggestions when organizing your comments. Please state your name. You may state your address, but that is strictly voluntary. State whether you support, oppose, or are neutral to the proposal. Your statement should include all pertinent facts within your knowledge. Please note, discussion on this matter is final unless appealed within 10 days by any interested individual or party. Recommendations on this item will be forwarded to the City Council at a later date for final determination. So we're going to go a little bit out of order. I know there are many members of the public here to speak on item 3, so we are going to begin with item 3. This is the time and place for conditional use permit number 2022-06 for the property located at 2221 North Heliotrope Drive, located within the single-family residence R1 zoning district. Before we begin, do any commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regard to this item? There are no disclosures. Pedro Gomez will provide a brief presentation.
Good evening, Vice Chair and fellow commissioners. Item number 3 is a request for approval of a conditional use permit to allow the construction of an accessory structure more than 15 feet in height within the rear yard of an existing single-family residence at 2221 North Heliotrope within the Flora Park neighborhood. The property has a general plan designation of LR7 or low-density residential, and it's zoned. And it's zoned. And it's zoned single-family residence or R1. It is surrounded by single-family residences on all elevations. The size is about 0.9 acres in size, and it's developed with a structure approximately 5,700 square feet in size, known as the Maharaja House, which was listed as landmark in 2003. These next couple of slides provide site photos taken on July 15 of this year by planning staff. The first photo is of Heliotrope Drive looking east. We have Santa Clara Avenue on the second photo looking southeast. Here we have Santa Clara Avenue on the right, on the left-hand side, looking east as well, kind of a closer image of the previous photo. Along Santa Clara Avenue, we have a view looking south. And then again on Santa Clara Avenue, we have a view looking southwest, and on Heliotrope looking northeast. And this is actually the third time that this item has been presented to this body. On March 28, 2022, the Planning Commission held a public hearing for the proposed project. At the public hearing, the Planning Commission engaged in extensive dialogue and expressed various concerns, including the following: history of unpermitted work on the site, potential concerns regarding any proposed lighting within the proposed structure, concerns regarding city oversight during construction, the primary structure's landmark status and Mills Act agreement, the proposed structure's compatibility, historic setting considerations, and guideline standards for review of the proposed project and historic setting considerations. The Planning Commission voted to continue the public hearing to the April 25th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. The continuance was intended to provide staff time to evaluate options of reducing the visual impacts by considering other locations, scale, size, massing, and screening, or a combination of all to address the community concerns. On April 25th, 2022, the Planning Commission held a continued public hearing at the request of the property owners. The recommended action was to continue the public hearing to a future date. The Planning Commission at that time voted unanimously to continue the item indefinitely. And since the 2022 Planning Commission public hearings, the property owners have revised the proposed project. Revisions include relocating the proposed structure away from the south end of the property, updating the site plan to accurately depict existing and proposed conditions, providing photo simulations. The revised application was submitted soon after the planning staff conducted a site visit of the property on the July 15th, as previously mentioned. And then the resubmitted conditional use permit application required renoticing of the project for tonight's Planning Commission consideration. So the revised project still includes a structure that's 205 square feet in size, and the height would be 23 feet and 4 inches. It's located towards the northeast of the property, approximately 15 feet from the rear east property line, and 12 feet from the side north property line, behind an existing 6-foot-high stucco wall and behind existing mature landscaping, which includes a mature tree and extensive amount of bamboo. The structure would be located approximately 30 feet east from the existing single-family residence. As designed, the structure would be ancillary and subordinate to the main single-family residence. The height of the existing residence is approximately 25 feet in height, while the tallest point of the structure would be 23 feet and 4 inches. The structure is designed in a hexagonal shape and would include 3 segments, with the main floor elevated from the ground floor approximately 7 feet and 6 inches. And this main floor would be accessed by a wood staircase and would have a clearance of 7 feet and 6 inches as well. The last segment of the structure is from the top plate to the roof peak level, which would be approximately 8 feet and 4 inches. And as described by the applicants, the structure was previously built in Vietnam. The structure is built in the traditional Vietnamese design and was fabricated by Vietnamese artisans. It was disassembled and shipped to the city of Santa Ana, and it would be reconstructed on the subject property. As proposed, the structure would share a similar design, materials, and cultural characteristics as various other structures on the site, including an existing garden house. Specifically, the structure would include prefabricated wood post members, traditional Vietnamese hand-carved wood details, and would include clay roofing tile. Lastly, the installation of the structure would be designed and overseen by a licensed structural engineer, the installation of it anyways, and the structure would not include mechanical or plumbing equipment. The structure would include limited electrical fixtures, and no noise sources are proposed for the structure. These next couple of slides show the proposed drawings. This first slide on the screen is the original site plan, which was presented to the Planning Commission in 2022. As you can see, the structure was originally proposed to be located towards the south end of the property along Heliotrope Drive, and that was approximately 60 feet from the front west property line and 25 feet from the rear south property line behind an existing 6-foot-high stucco wall. This slide on the screen shows the revised site plan. So again, the structure would be located towards the northeast corner of the property, approximately 15 feet from the rear east property line and 12 feet from the north property line behind that existing stucco wall that was previously discussed and the existing mature landscaping. These next couple of slides show the floor plans. The ground floor is shown on the left-hand side with the main floor on the right-hand side, and the bottom image shows the proposed roof plan. And here we have the proposed elevations. We have the east elevation and north elevation on this site. These elevations show those 3 segments that was previously discussed, including that top segment of 8 feet 4 inches. And then on this slide, we have the west elevation and the south elevation. In addition to the drawings we just reviewed, the applicant has also provided conceptual renderings. The renderings provide approximation of what the structure could look like, given the location and the proposed dimensions. The first conceptual view is along Santa Clara Avenue, looking south, and the next is from the interior rear yard, looking north. The installation of the proposed structure would not result in a change to the existing land use. Instead, the property will continue to be used as it was historically, a single-family residence. In addition, the proposed structure has been designed to be located away from adjacent properties to minimize the privacy concerns and visual impacts. By locating the structure towards the northeast end of the property, the design limits the potential impacts to the single-family properties along all elevations due to the proposed setbacks and the existing 6-foot-high stucco wall and the existing mature landscaping ranging in height from 12 feet to 25 feet tall. In addition, the public right-of-way parkways are improved with mature oak trees along Santa Clara Avenue, which further help minimize the privacy concerns and visual impacts of this proposed structure. The existing landscaping and mature trees are not proposed to be removed or altered, and then to ensure that the existing landscaping conditions are maintained, staff is recommending a condition of approval requiring that the trees be preserved and protected in place. Moreover, staff is recommending a condition of approval requiring that the applicant plant additional bamboo behind the existing 6-foot-high wall to help screen any deficient areas. And staff is recommending bamboo as it's one of the faster growing plants and it would help maintain consistency with the existing landscaping. In addition, by setting back the structure approximately 15 feet from the east property line, the design limits any potential aesthetic impacts to the property to the east. The overall design and location will ensure that the neighborhood character is maintained along Santa Clara Avenue, ensuring that the construction of the proposed structure will not result in a change to the neighborhood character or identity. To further ensure that the proposed structure will not negatively affect the neighborhood character, staff is recommending a condition of approval prohibiting the use of the structure and the site for any commercial purposes, including but not limited to tours, museums, festivals, etc. The site will be required to remain and operate as a single-family residence, or the conditional use permit may be subject to ratification as outlined in the city's municipal code. Other recommended conditions include restrictions on lighting and noise. The installation of the proposed structure would not result in any physical alterations to the Maharaja House and would not impact any of the view sheds along any public perspectives. Both Santa Clara Avenue and Heliotrope would remain unimpaired. Moreover, the Maharaja House will continue to retain all of its character-defining features. Any changes related to the installation of the structure would be confined to the backyard. It would not affect the historical integrity of Floral Park, the National Floral Park Historic District as a whole. And this is due to the limited physical scale of the changes, which would result in the structure being partially visible only from few public vantage points, further reducing its visual effects to the internal setting of the historic district. And then lastly, the bamboo would be clearly visible from the right-of-way, but its appearance alongside the existing wall would be consistent with the internal setting of Floral Park Historic District, which is characterized in part by its variety of landscaping. And as noted in the 2022 public hearings, no additional review by the Historic Resources Commission is required for this project, as the proposed structure is not physically altering or changing the exterior of the Maharaja House, and this is supported by Chapter 30 of the city's municipal code. Approval of the CUP would be consistent with several goals and policies of the general plan, including goals 2 and 3 of the land use element and goal 1 of the historic preservation element. And then pursuant to CEQA and the CEQA guidelines, the project is exempt from further review pursuant to section 15303 for new construction of small structures. Because the project involves the construction of a small accessory structure, and then a notice of exemption will be filed for this project. There is no fiscal impact associated with this project. And lastly, staff would like to note 2 items. One, as previously discussed, the property is listed on the local historic register, and for purposes of CEQA, this means that the property is defined as a historical resource. In accordance with CEQA, a project may have a significant effect on a historic resource if it causes substantial adverse change to the significance of that resource. So substantial adverse change can be defined as a physical demolition, destruction, relocation, or alteration of the resource or its immediate surroundings such that the significance of the historic resource would be materially impaired. Furthermore, the significance of a historic resource is materially impaired when a project demolishes or materially alters in an adverse manner those physical characteristics that account for its inclusion in the local register. And we call that character-defining features. In this case, the proposed accessory structure would not cause a substantial adverse change to the Maharaja House. The Maharaja House would not be physically demolished. It's not being destroyed, relocated, or altered in a way that would significantly or materially impair the site. Moreover, all the character-defining features would remain intact for this site. And the second note that planning staff would like to mention tonight is that this project is in conformance with the city-wide design guidelines, specifically Chapter 13, Historic Structure Guidelines. Chapter 13 discusses accessory structures and provide guidelines as how they should be constructed on sites with historic significance. For example, accessory structures should be architecturally compatible, maintaining proportionality. And accessory structures are generally utilitarian, and they do not need to incorporate the level of detail as the main structure unless it's being attached. In this case, the project maintains a similar building proportionality, similar in height as the Maharaja House, and it's not attached and is out of view from the street. Therefore, the project is consistent with Chapter 13 of the citywide design guidelines. With that, staff concludes the presentation and would recommend that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution approving conditional use permit number 2022-06 as conditioned. The applicant and property owners are available and in attendance tonight if there's any questions that should be directed towards them. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions for staff? Commissioner Wu?
I'd like to thank you, Pedro, for going back over the history and the historical factor and noting that it does not provide any changes to the historical nature of the Maharaja building. My question is, though, there was a little passage that the mature trees cannot be significantly altered or changed in any way. Does that mean the trees that are on the sidewalk that the city maintained, or the trees that are overhanging from the property over? I was understood by one of your inspectors that go through the neighborhood citing things, that you got to maintain a 7.5 inch, 7 foot clearance, right? Between trees that overlap over sidewalks.
I thank you, Commissioner. To answer your question, the condition of approval for maintaining the mature trees is only for the private property. The city maintains the public right-of-way trees, and my understanding is any changes to public right-of-way trees require review and approval by the Public Works Department and the Environmental and Transportation, it's ETAC, I forget the exact name for it, but it's the
So if
ETAC
your tree
committee.
is on the private, on your private property or on the corner property, but it overhangs over the sidewalk, it has to be at least 7 foot high or higher, right?
Those generally need to be maintained and they can't go into the public right-of-way. So general maintenance is okay. Removal completely of the trees is something that the conditions of approval would work against, essentially. So if approved, they wouldn't be able to remove the trees or the bamboo in a way that would allow visibility of the structure.
So a citation would qualify as the city telling you you got to do something.
Could you repeat the question?
Well, I'm just trying to see where you're not supposed to touch a tree because it's mature, and you get a citation, which comes for, how do you handle it?
So if the property owners receive the notice to maintain the landscaping away from the right-of-way, that's generally acceptable, but they cannot remove the tree in its entirety.
Then from what I understand is that you place this, a limitation on the structure being a secondary dwelling, 27.4.
The height of the structure is 24 feet, or actually it's 23 feet, 4 inches.
Okay, so it meets that requirement. I'm just going over it again for the record.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. Commissioner Pham, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Pedro, it looks like the major kind of modification that's presented today versus what was presented last time was just the location of the set structure. The structure itself wasn't modified to conform with comments that were kind of given last time.
There's a slight variation in the height. So when the project was originally noticed for the 2022 public hearing, it was 23 feet, 4 inches. However, prior to the meeting, staff received numerous letters in opposition and concerns regarding the height and the location. When we presented this information to the property owner voluntarily reduced the height of the structure to 21 feet. It was smaller, slightly smaller. I forget exactly the height here. However, given the new location and the additional screening that's existing and the additional screening that would be required, the property owners wanted to, again, propose the original height, which was 23 feet, 4 inches. So the height has technically changed, but it's mostly the location that has changed.
And for clarification, this property isn't registered with the Mills Act, is that correct?
It is. It's on our register, and it's also a Mills Act property.
So has this property benefited from funds within the Mills Act or funds from the public?
Any property that's a Mills Act property does get reduced property tax savings, so yes.
And in receiving those funds, are there obligations, even though this is a private property, are there obligations to maintain certain standards because funds were received? Just in general, just.
Yes,
context
the
of
intent of the
that.
Mills Act program is to have a property tax savings to then reinvest into the property to maintain the historic structure.
And there's certain guidelines, kind of extent of what that maintenance should be, correct?
That's correct.
And then I noticed that there were several comments from the public that there seems to be kind of more than normal traffic to the site, potentially it being used more than a single-family home. Has there been any noise violation or any kind of public nuisance report at the property?
Not that staff is aware of related to what it is that you're talking about. As far as staff is concerned, that structures in the site's being used as a single-family residence only.
Okay, so we haven't observed that in terms of staff being on site or any kind of official reporting.
Staff has not observed that, and as far as I know, we haven't received any complaints from neighbors that the site's being used for anything other than a single-family residence.
That's it for me for now.
Thank you,
Rachel.
Commissioner Pham. Commissioner Leo, do you have any questions?
I just have one question for staff. Average height of an ADU in the city? If we have a standalone garage, you put a second store in, what are we talking, 24 feet, 25 feet?
So detached garages maybe about 15, 16 feet in height. I don't know the average for ADUs because the state now allows them to go up to 20 feet. So I would say prior to the state law changing to 20 feet, we'd get about maybe 15, 16 feet. That seems about standard for a one-story structure, enough height to get the roof clearance that you need.
Okay. That's my only question.
Thank you, Commissioner Escamilla.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to start off with, thank you for teeing up the Mills Act question. Do we know when they're usually set, 10-year auto renewal periods? Do we know when the next expiration date is on the Mills Act?
Not at the top of my head, Commissioner, but we can find that out for you.
Okay. So I guess that's question one. Question two, my understanding from the information presented here is that there is no specific requirement for the Historic Resource Commission to review this application. I guess I'm just looking for what my options or what the body's options are for at least having official input from the Historic Resource Commission. I don't know if we have any history or any previous example of a historic property being modified or at least having an additional accessory structure that technically doesn't require maybe HRC approval, but would potentially benefit from HRC input. And again, this is just to kind of ask, legally, we're maybe not required, but to establish best practices when you do have a landmark structure. And again, not to say that that recommendation or anything coming out of the HRC would bind this body or bind, obviously, the city council, but what are maybe some options here if we're looking to say, well, we really do want HRC to take a look at this? Because I think that was one of the kind of series of comments that we received from at least, I think, 3 members of the public, excluding the members of the public that are in the HRC that commented.
So we spent a great deal of time talking about this in 2022 with the Planning Commission, and I think what it comes down to is that this is not technically in the purview of the HRC. So it's a land use matter. The municipal code is very explicit in the powers and duties of the HRC, and so is Chapter 30. There's no alterations to the historic structure. Yes, it's being proposed in a historic setting, a site, but really there's no purview that the HRC has for this. So it wouldn't be warranted to have that sort of what you're suggesting, because the body that decides on it is the Planning Commission, because it's a land use matter, it's a conditional use permit. So I would advise against it, because there's no justification for that in staff's mind.
Right, but if, as a deliberative body, I would feel that I would benefit from HRC input, is that still, viable? Or there's no legal boundary to doing it, it's just not necessarily a recommendation to go ahead and drag this out further than it's already been dragged out?
I mean, so At the time, in 2022, the Planning Commission gave pretty specific direction to the property owners about the issues, the main issues, right? The compatibility, location. And so over the last couple of years, the property owners have worked to address those land use matters. They've come back and presented a project that addresses those issues. The staff report is pretty clear in presenting to the commission what they can approve, disapprove, and what findings they have to make. And so if you were looking for some direction about that, I can't provide it to you, but I can say that your decision is based on the findings that are provided in the resolution tonight, and only those decisions or findings. So if you felt that you needed to continue the project for a specific reason, you'd have to outline that reason tonight. If you felt like you needed to deny the project, it'd have to be one of those findings that we've outlined. But I couldn't advise you on continuing this project for the HRC's input because they have no purview on this matter.
But I guess there was one staff interpretation along minimal impact of view corridors, and it probably is relatively minimal from that. Oh my gosh, I guess this is the Santa Clara side of things. But again, I guess that's the question in my mind is staff has interpreted this particular visual impact to be relatively negligible, and I think from the renderings that we have in front, maybe appears to be so. But I just don't know whether or not that body would also find that to be, would it actually have an impact? Is there such a thing as, considering an alteration or an addition onto the site is potentially impacting the historic character of the site, and whether or not within the, the actual nomination packet for the Maharaja House, whether or not it includes references to the site overall. So again, those are more technical, like within the realm of the Historic Resource Commission to discuss that I'm kind of still a little bit, questioning. And I say this as someone on the HRC that, this is something we'd probably want to discuss as to whether or not, adding a pagoda that alters the vertical lines associated with all the walls there, whether or not that is an issue. Because again, if it's a streamlined modern structure, we're looking at horizontal structures as kind of like the base level of anything we'd want to add to this particular site. If this was a brand new ADU, we'd want it to be architecturally compatible. In this case, it's not, and I understand it's being essentially reassembled, so I don't think we can really change it. But again, I do feel that it would set a bad precedent for the body up here to make a decision on a landmark structure without absolutely any input from the Historic Resources Commission. I just think that that's bad practice in general. But that's, I guess, where I'm at right now, and we still have public comments, and we still have, other rounds of questions, but that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just trying to see what is legally allowed for us up here.
If I may, Commissioner, the staff report is staff's position on those matters. So staff does do an analysis of the historic structure, an analysis of the historic setting, and so it's staff's position that this would not be detrimental to the historic structure or setting. In regards to having the HRC review these types of structures, really what you're looking for is the height. If the structure was 15 feet or less, it would not be before you because it's not something that requires a conditional use permit. And actually, there's a lot of structures on the site that are been approved by the city staff because they didn't require entitlement or discretionary review that are on the site now. And those are of a similar design, artisan, same thing where they've been shipped from Vietnam and constructed on the site. So it's our position that this is something that's not going to be detrimental to the historic structure. It's in a location that is not going to be detrimental to the neighborhood, and it's going to be sufficiently screened to not affect the view sheds along any primary elevation for the Maharaja House, that being heliotrope and portions of Santa Clara. So our positions on those matters, Commissioner, are detailed in the staff report, and staff feels strongly that that's the case.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Escamilla, have you concluded your comments? We're going to go to Commissioner Carl Benninger, and then we'll come back. Commissioner Benninger?
Thank you. In 2022, there was a number of recommendations made. Have all those been completed? Were all those incorporated in the new one?
They have, Commissioner.
Okay, is there any left over that they just ignored?
Absent not doing the structure, no.
Okay. I drove by it today, took a look at it. It's a beautiful house, beautiful structure, I have to admit. I was kind of concerned, and you answered my question, that is bamboo trees that are on the holotrope side. Is that the maximum height that those trees will get?
I'm not familiar with the maximum height. I know they're fast growing, but I'm sure through general maintenance, they can be maintained to whatever height would be acceptable for the commission.
Reading the letters today, a lot of people are concerned that this is going to turn into non-residential use, whether it be religious or gatherings or what have you. Have we addressed that with the owners?
We have shared draft conditions of approval prior to the agenda fully being released, and then the agenda, of course, being forwarded over to the property owners. And in that resolution of approval that we're recommending, there's specific conditions that prohibit the use other than single-family residence. And if not, the municipal code has very clear revocation processes in the event that the operation of this structure is not consistent with both the conditional use permit, the zoning, and the municipal code.
So the owners cannot turn it into some sort of temple or Vietnamese religious site? What you telling me?
So we have to be careful with, the term or use of religious, because that is something that is a use that's permitted in the residential zone, but through a conditional use permit. I think the concern that a lot of the public comments have expressed is this is going to be open to the public, not a religious institution necessarily, but open for tourism, cultural tours, school buses coming in. That is very clear a commercial use, and it's not permitted in the single-family zone, and it's not going to be permitted pursuant to these conditions of approval.
Also mentioned is that there's been a number of items constructed in this backyard area. Has there been a number of items built?
There has been. So there's an existing garden room that was shipped in, I forget exactly the date, from Vietnam, and it was something that went through the building permitting process. It got building permits, and it was reassembled on the site, and because it did not exceed the height that triggers a conditional use permit, it was something that did not come for this planning commission. There's other structures that don't require building permits because they're not of the threshold size of 120 square feet. And then there's an existing pool house that was converted to, at the time, it was like a storage space for antiquities. We've since resolved that matter with the property owners, and they're going through the building permitting process to legalize the structure. So it's something that's compliant with our code.
Reading some of these county or cities, I should input, was the swimming pool altered in order to put this structure in this location?
Commissioner, one more time.
Was the swimming pool altered in order to make room for this structure?
It was not altered to make room for the structure, but it was altered.
Not because of the structure. Also, we kind of going over quickly what kind of lighting is going to be in this pagoda and how you're going to prevent it from lighting up the neighborhood.
The original 2022 proposal included limited uplighting to kind of display the structure. And what we did for staff was recommend a condition of approval to ensure that the lighting is turned off by 10 p.m. so it doesn't become a light nuisance to adjacent property owners, and that it's only limited for that specific amount of time.
The first floor, is that going to be built on concrete or is that going to be dirt?
I'm not familiar with the structural requirements, but most of these structures have to have some sort of footing. And so given the design that there's posts coming down to the ground, my guess is that there would be concrete footings for each one of those posts, but I'm not sure if there would be like concrete pad necessarily.
Because my concern, if it was concrete slab, could it not be built into a room down there below?
That would not be the case.
And would that be allowed if they wanted to do that?
No, that would not be allowed.
I'm through with my questions, thank you.
Thank you. I also have some questions for staff before we start another round of comments and questions from everybody else. So thank you for the presentation. I also read all of the comment letters that were sent to us, and it seems that there have been some concerns with the maintenance and upkeep of the historical home and the site. And I just want to confirm that that is not in the purview of this commission tonight or any other night?
Yes and no. Generally, any sort of maintenance of a historic structure is staff, we have administrative delegations from the HRC that we can kind of ensure that it's being maintained. There's the Mills Act part of it as well that needs to be maintained. There's a municipal code for, standards for residential, so our code enforcement can provide citations if need to. But tonight, in addition to all of the conditions of approval that we're recommending, we are also recommending that prior to building permits being issued for the site, that the property be brought up into full maintenance and compliance with the applicable municipal standards. That includes, but it's not limited to repair and upkeep of the property, cleaning up trash debris, repair of any damaged or weather components of the historic structure. So in that sense, it's being part of your purview tonight because it's a condition of approval tonight. But generally, that part of it is under the purview of the HRC and what they delegate to staff for administrative matters.
Okay, so if this was approved tonight as recommended with that statute listed, there would, or the intent would be that there would be significant improvements to the historic home before the structure went up. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's right, and those are reasonable. So what the intent would be is that staff would continue working with the property owners to identify what is not being maintained, what needs to be repaired and upkept, and continue to work with them that all the work is done prior to permits being issued for this structure. Otherwise, they would not be satisfying the condition of approval for this, and they would not be able to act on their conditional use permit.
Thank you. And then for the record and also for the public's knowledge, if any resident sees a home that is a part of the registry and we understand that there's a responsibility for its historic integrity to be maintained, and that's not happening, what steps can a resident take to ensure that any responsibilities that have been set forth by the Mills Act in the city and the Historic Resources Commission are being met?
This generally applies to any structure, not necessarily to historic or Mills Act properties, but homeowners, property owners, residents, community members are always welcome to use our My Santa Ana app to report any sort of code enforcement violations. They're welcome to use our code enforcement hotline, call our staff, make it aware, and they're also welcome to call our historic preservation team, myself included, and we have a member who's on leave currently, but we take these matters seriously and we review these in a timely manner, and ensure that the work is done, that properties are maintained how they're supposed to be being maintained.
Thank you. And then another concern I saw or I read was that if this structure is approved and built, that it wouldn't just be used for private use, but that it would be somehow become more of a public use. And I know you spoke to this earlier and said that if that became the case, the CUP could be revoked. So can you speak to that and what that process would be?
Sure. So generally, I understand the community concerns. At this point, there's just speculation. We don't have any proof or information suggesting that this would be the case. But the municipal code does outline a process for revocation. Before we get to that point, there's generally enforcement matters, right? So the code enforcement arm of our public building or planning and building agency would go through the administrative citation process and then citation process to inform property owners that they're operating not in compliance with their conditional use permit. They'd give them a set time to come into compliance, and if that work or that operation continues to not be in compliance, then we can escalate the process. We have to kind of build this case. There'd be continued citations, and then eventually there'd be a case for revocation of the conditional use permit process. In some cases, that can be a lot sooner than an administrative process for the code enforcement efforts, but that's generally how it would go. If tonight the property owners are being made aware that that is the requirement and expectation if this project were to get approved. So there's no saying that I didn't know that that was the requirement, essentially. So that's generally the process, and our municipal code outlines kind of the revocation process, and I think it would be a public hearing process as well.
Thank you. So based off the questions I've heard and your responses and also seeing the conditions of approval, it seems like the concerns that were raised in 2022 are being addressed, along with the concerns that this would become a site for public use, and that the historic home is not being upkept. So I'm hearing that that would also be improved with this approval. And then I had another question, and I'm wondering, I didn't see anything, but were there any formal comments made by the Floral Park Neighborhood Association, any neighboring neighborhood association, or the group of people or committee that helped acquire Floral Park's National Historical District designation?
I don't know that there was a comment received specifically stating that this was coming directly from the Floral Park Association or the neighborhood specifically, but there are some members of the community who were involved with the National Register process who did provide written comments about it. So I don't know that they're representing the larger neighborhood entirely, but they're representing themselves, yeah.
Thank you. I asked because I did see some specifically state that they were not representing any groups, but they were speaking as individuals, so thank you. I'm going to go back to another round of commissioner comments. Commissioner Wu?
Madam Chair, I appreciate you going back to the 2022, where we continued this item indefinitely to give the homeowner an opportunity to relook at their plan and make changes. What is consistent is that this is still a single-family dwelling. It is family-owned, and it's single-family dwelling. That has not changed, right, Pedro?
That's correct,
The second
Commissioner.
thing is that if we look at the land usage, every item that you mentioned in your report dealt with the use of height, the use of language, location, and things of that matter. And the plan was modified from the last time that we were originally presented this, right? Right. So going forward, our decision today is just based on not historical thing, but you already brought that up and brought it within the historical content. It's not a historical review, whether or not, because the property owner has not modified the property in any way to change the nature of the Art Deco building. So the thing that we're just addressing is this additional unit.
Not a unit, just a structure. It's not habitable.
Right. So no one's going to live there.
Correct.
Right. So, but it is one of those items that are part of the garden.
Yeah.
So, so I just wanted to note to the public that this is part of the clarification and postponement that we had, so that we had time to kind of work these things out. And that it didn't need to be referred back to the historical commission. Thank you.
Do any commissioners have any additional questions or comments at this time? And you'll also have the chance to speak again if you don't have any right now.
Yeah, no, and this might just be, I don't know, do we have a copy of the Mills Act contract available? I didn't see it in the attachments, or I might have missed it.
It's not included as part of the attachments for the present, or for the item tonight, but I did confirm that that Mills Act agreement was from 2014, so the 10 years would be now, essentially. So as you know, it gets a revolving 10 years after that. So it is something that is due for renewal, if not already, later this year.
Yeah, so statistically speaking, we're in August, so it's most likely already renewed if it's 2024. No, and I just want to clarify, because there was one comment that referred to no alterations of the site within the Mills Act contract. So I don't know if that was from the applicant, sorry, from the commentor, or if that was actual language from the Mills Act. And I think that would be worth looking into. So I need that specific language in front of me. We can move on until we kind of get that copy.
Thank you, Commissioner Escamilla. So we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. We're going to have members of the public speak first. So Recording Secretary, have we received any written communication, or is there a member of the public that would like to comment on this item?
We have received public comment prior to the 3:30 p.m. deadline, which has been distributed to the commission and posted online. If you're attending this meeting in person and would like to comment on this item, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it into the secretary. If you are participating via Zoom and would like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon and unmute yourself once your name is called. If you're calling in and would like to comment on this item, please dial 9 and then 6 to unmute yourself. I have provided you with 6 speakers cards, and currently there isn't any Zoom speakers.
Recording secretary, I have 5. One missing.
Sorry, it was 5.
Thank you. So I would just like to remind members of the public that you have 3 minutes. Please state your name. You may state your address, but that is strictly voluntary. State whether you support, oppose, or are neutral to the proposal, and your statement should include all pertinent facts within your knowledge. We're going to begin with Tim Rush.
Good evening, Chair, the Planning Commission, members of the Planning Commission and staff. My name is Tim Rush. I live at 1225 South Broadway Street, and I'm in Wilshire Square. I've lived in town for nearly 30 years, 40 years, I guess. Anyway, I am serving currently my 5th term as chair of the Historic Resources Commission. However, I'm here speaking tonight as a private citizen. Most of you know that I have been involved in historic preservation throughout Santa Ana nearly since the first day I moved here, from the restoration of the Spurgeon Clock Tower to most recently saving the Orange County Title Company building. I'm down here tonight to speak in opposition to this proposed request. I would agree with Commissioner Escamilla that yes, this should have come before the Historic Resources Commission. Even though this is a structure which is separate from the main building, it is so huge. Look at this structure. It would appear to be a 3.5-story structure. It's less than 2 feet from the height of the main structure of the building. I wouldn't call that subservient to the main structure. I disagree strongly with staff's report. I disagree that this has no bearing on the site, which is a part of the Secretary of the Interior standards. I disagree that it does not interfere with the view shed. When you look at this building, plus the other tea house which was constructed, plus all the other statuary that is in the front yard, I would submit to you that it interferes with the view shed. I have no objection to these folks, their Vietnamese culture or history. I would be as strongly opposed if this was to honor the Czech Republic. That's not my issue. My suggestion is go lease or buy a piece of real estate that is properly zoned for this on Main Street and erect your cultural center. Don't do it in historic Floral Park. Maintain this neighborhood. Maintain the integrity of this historic property, which was the only residence ever built for a foreign magistrate in North America. It is very, very unique, and it's being desecrated day by day. It's death by 1,000 cuts. I encourage you to vote no, vote against this application. And in fact, I would submit their Mills Act application ought to be revoked, and the city should seek a rebate, a refund of the money that they've been given. They are not maintaining the structure. They've
Thank
owned
you.
this
Your time
property
is up.
30 years, and they have never put a lick of paint on this property.
Sir, your time
They've
is up.
never
Thank you for
resolved
your
the issue
comments.
regarding the broken down steel
Recording secretary.
casement windows on the
Can we
property.
mute the mic?
Thank
Your
you.
time's up, sorry.
Thank you. Mark Scrat, I believe.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Mark Spratt. I've been a proud homeowner and a business owner in West Floral Park for over 10 years. And I stand before you this evening with deep concern and in opposition of the conditional use permit application for 221 North Heliotrope, commonly known as the Maharaja House. This remarkable 25-room, streamlined, modern house designed by Donald Kirby in 1938 is not just any other property. This is a significant piece of Santa Ana history. A landmark registered and listed on the historic Register of Historic Places, the Maharaja House holds a unique place in Santa Ana's history of being the only foreign royal palace ever built in the United States, owned once by Sir Yaswat Haldakar, the Maharaja of Indore. However, this home, which is zoned R1, was intended to be a residential property and not a commercial establishment. Unfortunately, the current owners have been living in it and operating it as a cultural center, which directly violates the residential zoning. The request for a conditional use permit to legitimize this ongoing misuse threatens the very integrity of Santa Ana zoning laws. Approving this conditional use permit would set a dangerous precedent, opening the door for further erosion of the residential character that makes Santa Ana special. This isn't just about one property, it's about preserving the essence of our neighborhood and respecting the zoning laws to protect it. We must ask ourselves, why would we allow such a violation to our zoning laws to continue? The answer would be clear, we must not. Let's work together to uphold the integrity of Santa Ana and our city, preserving its unique residential charm for generations to come. I should also add, I agree with Tim in terms of the Mills Act. I mean, I encourage all of you to go down to the house, physically go down to the house, and from the street you can see how much disrepair it needs to be painted. All the window casings are rotting. You can see that from the street. So the Mills Act, which they're supposed to be benefiting from, they're not contributing to the upkeep of the house. And I encourage all of you to go down and look for yourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ed Murashi, I believe. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. Appreciate it. I'm here, Ed Marashi, 2139 North Flower Street, Floral Park. I am been a historic commissioner for over a decade. I've been past president. I was a president when we started doing the historic district application. I was on the committee that did that. A lot of background. I disapprove of the variance, and the reason is because if you go back to slide 28, you heard about two things tonight. You heard about view corridor, and we use that term heavily at the HRC. You know, if you have a tree or anything else that's obstructing the view of the house, that's blocking it, that's a view corridor incident. We wouldn't let that happen. And then you also heard about architectural compatibility when it comes to accessory structures. So let's talk about that. If you're standing there at the corner of Santa Clara and Heliotrope, and you look down the edge of that house, you can see that pavilion right there. So it could almost appear to be attached to the house, although, you know, it's set back. What we've seen tonight is renderings from Santa Clara. Yes, you have all the bamboo there covering it, and you have the massive tree in the far back covering it there. But when you're at that point looking in, you can see it. And that's why I don't think you saw a rendering, because they wouldn't want to show you that to you. The second thing is, again, compatibility, architectural compatibility. So if you're sitting there and you're looking at this palace that was built for the Prince of, Maharaja, Indore, that for his daughter, you're looking at a palace, which is a modern style, and right next to it, you would see partial Vietnamese pavilion style. To me, that's not architecturally compatible, and that's my concern. I mean, if you were talking, Commissioner Escamilla, about what an HRC, I can't talk about an HRC, I'm not allowed to, but just from things in the past that I've heard and seen, and maybe at meetings like that, if you can't see it, then it's probably okay. I mean, like design changes in the back. Well, you're going to be able to see that from that one point. And again, that's the front of the house, and that's where most people are looking. You're not excited about looking at the side of the house from Santa Clara in that rendering. You're more interested in the front. So I disapprove of the variance. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mike Silva.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mike Silva, 2009 North Victoria Floral Park. I oppose to it. My wife and I both oppose it. I think historically compatible, just the name of the resolution says it, Maharaja House and Vietnamese Pavilion. To me, that's just incompatible right there without even architects looking at it. So that's the first thing. Then my wife and I, unfortunately, we experienced this in Garden Grove. And we'll get the address for you. We're on 11311 Lamson, and they put a similar pagoda, I guess, across the street, and it became a tourist trap. Not the fault of the homeowners. And the traffic there is unbelievable. Contact anybody at Garden Grove and they'll tell you. It's on Lamson between Euclid and 9th Street. It is unbelievable traffic. They can't control it. So in the homeowner's defense, they're not going to be able to control it regardless of what the resolution says. They don't, because this thing's going to be awesome. And once word gets out that this thing is an historical thing and it's Vietnamese and everything about it, it's going to be a tourist trap, and it should be. But it should be built at Bowers Museum or a separate piece of property, not in the middle of Floral Park. They're going to have no control over that. And then for staff report, just so everybody knows, the staff report's 150 pages long, so they did their homework on it, but it's hard for a regular person to go through this. I would say they're not in compliance. If you go to, in this, it says, at this time the report was printed, the building plans were still in building plan check, have not been approved for permit issuance. So they are not in compliance right now. The plans are in the city, so who knows if they're going to be in compliance. Then it also says in here that they built 2 additional structures that do not appear to be over 120 square feet. That's not a fact. That means it doesn't appear. They didn't go measure it. So if those are over, they already have too many structures on the site, and that's per the staff report. I just went through and did the highlights. And then again, they have a nice condition here that it can't be commercial, can't have school buses and tourists, but they're gonna have no control over that. I'm telling you, they have no control. And that's what's gonna happen. So we prefer not to be in Floral Park. It's probably got some incredible historical significance, but it should be someplace else where everybody can enjoy it. I have no problem with that, but not in someone's backyard. And it's just not compatible with Floral Park. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Angel Barnes?
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to express our opinions and concerns. This is, well, I have been looking at this issue from the perspective of a Santa Ana judge for 10 years, and prior to that, a practicing attorney for 25. And I'm concerned about what approving this request would mean to the city, because the traffic that this addition will create, I have heard the homeowner say that it will eventually be a cultural center. She and her husband own 2 homes just blocks away, and they are single-level homes. This is an older couple, and eventually it's their hope to move into one of those homes so that the center can be available for people to go through. And the traffic will surely affect the property values of the other heliotrope residents. And how will that affect the city if someone brings a legal claim for the diminution of their $1 million property value? And the center will also attract lots of people to Floral Park that would ordinarily not even know about this affluent community. And would that be good or not so good for our security? So I ask that you deny this request. If people want to see a Vietnamese cultural center, they can travel just 15 minutes away, less than 9 miles, to Little Saigon and not to Floral Park. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are any other members of the public that would like to speak, you may now submit a public speaker card. Recording Secretary, do we have any speakers on Zoom?
We do have a speaker on Zoom. There is no name provided, but guest, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, this is Dale Helbig, Ward 3. I have just a couple comments. If a resident was to build an ADU, he's restricted in height. And so I'm curious as to what the height restriction would be for this CUP if they decided to go 30, 40 feet. Is there an upper height limit on what they could do under a CUP? The other thing I'd like to know is why would you issue a CUP that has restrictions that says they have to be in compliance with the repairs required under Mills Act? You know, it seems like they ought to be getting the CUP after they're in compliance, not just restricting the building permit requirement to, you know, to be in line with the process. So I think they ought to come back at a later time once they're in compliance with the Mills Act, with all the repairs, and then take their chances then. I also think the height ought to be reduced to the same height as an ADU. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to speak on the matter?
I'm Quinn Q, and then owner of the house. And first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Gomez for his presentation and the planning staff as well as the Planning Commission for the extensive work that they have done on this, which included several visits personally, which were quite extensive. And I thank the Planning Commission for spending the time to review all this. And also I've heard from my neighbors in that area who have spoken to the concerns. Also, I know that my immediate neighbors on the left and right on Santa Clara have written on that subject as well. And then if possible, then if the communication could be read, because they've lived along with us for decades. So they know what we have done, whether we have run it as a cultural center or whether the use of our property has bothered them in any way. So both of us are physicians who are quite old, and then we have quite a large backyard, and we find a lot of gratification in enjoying the structures that we have brought. I know that some of the speakers said that there are structures, but first of all, I want to clarify, we are Catholic, and I do not have any intention anyway. This is not a pagoda that we could be putting up. It's an open gazebo. It's higher because it's a moon pavilion, which means that it's designed so that you can look at the moon, so it's higher than the other. We have two other gazebos, which are from the same compound from Central Vietnam. It was built in the 1800s. They all were part of one big garden built by an official who retired in Central Vietnam in the area of Quang Ngai. So then when we had the opportunity to acquire it, then it needed to be repaired because it had been out on the outdoor quite a long time. So it took the pandemic for us to be able to find the very skilled craftsmen who were able to retire it and restore it patiently. So for this structure in question, it has been laying all the posts and columns in my backyard and exposed to the elements, and we brought it from Vietnam. I would like to have the opportunity to put it up. And yes, we try to hide it away, and just for the purpose of information for this body, that bamboos can grow quite tall. We have a bamboo cluster in front of the house, which faces heliotrope, is 40 feet. So it can more than hide this structure. if we water it more and provide it better care or more care, so we can make it grow quite fast. So, so this to address this. And as far as, and I would like to reassure everyone that we do enjoy the peace and the of our backyard, and we have not used the instances that, you know, my neighbor may, if they would care to remember, twice we had a Mid-Autumn Festival, which was on the street in my, on the sidewalk, and one of those times, the neighborhood association even obtained for us the clearance to have the street blocked so that we could have that in September for the children, because it's a lantern festival for the children. And those were the two direct instances in which I'd say there is somewhat of a cultural implication, but that was for the whole neighborhood. And that did not, and at that time, they did not come into the backyard. I can still do it because in our neighborhood is very charming. We have 4th of July, we have a lot of opportunities that people can, like Halloween coming up, they will be using the street to do those kind of celebrations. So I want to reassure everybody that this is not intended to be a religious structure in any way, because this is not what it is. It's not designed for that. It's open up. It doesn't have any closure or closing wall at all, so it's not appropriate and cannot be used for that instance. So if there's any questions more specific, I'd say, if at all, my neighbor, Mr. Melching, and then another neighbor in the back, they can reassure that they have been very clear that they've lived with us for decades, and our use of the property has been always very quiet and very appropriate to the residential area. So I would like to, we like to be able to enjoy it. And then our garden is quite large. And I have some members who expressed concern that we're not upkeeping the House of the Maharaja. It's an old house, so from the interior standpoint and exterior standpoint, there's a lot of upkeeping that we have to do. And if my neighbor would like to see that, I can give him some of the painting bills and the upkeep bills that we have, which are quite substantial. And if that needs to be provided in order to justify the fact that of the Mills Act, I can assure everybody the break that I get in the property tax is very minimal compared to what the real upkeep of a structure like that is. So if there is any more specific questions from the commissioners, I would be happy to address it.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments for the applicant? Commissioner Pham.
I appreciate your presentation. I just wanted you to clarify, you've heard your neighbors' comments about their not wanting that pavilion on the property. Knowing that you do have other cultural pavilions on your property, why is it so important to add this to your property? Can't there be a concession on either ends?
So, Commissioner Pham, I appreciate your asking this, and the reason is, as I briefly mentioned, this is part of a compound of one retired official who put this up in his garden. It's quite well known in the village of Châu Ổ in Quảng Ngãi. It is, so all the style and the carving, everything matches. So the two other smaller gazebos are normal small gazebos, and they're already up in my backyard. But this is a companion to all these. So I didn't want to separate them, and they're part of one historical complex, which is well known in Quảng Ngãi area. I didn't think that I would offend people by bringing another historical artifacts or structures to something which is already a historical structure in Floral Park. All these were built in the 1800s. And they are very attractive. And if the building, I got building permit to put the house of the built in 1843 in the back, it matches perfectly. It was approved. It's already on the property. So why would there be a problem if there is a garden which is sort of within the same work space, which is compatible with it?
And another follow-up question. I just want to make sure you're aware of condition number 8 that Pedro, I'm sure, has forwarded to you, that if this were to be approved, if any use that's outside of a single-family residence use, your understanding is the city would ask you to remove the pavilion at your, I'm assuming at your cost, if there is finding that is not being used correctly. Do you understand that?
Yes, I understand that.
And
And we have reviewed the conditions that the staff brought up, and we agree with it. We're elderly, so I had knee surgeries, and so had my husband had knee surgeries. But as long as we're capable of going upstairs or living in it, so my husband every day spent a whole day in the garden. So this is what he does. So I don't see how we can separate what we are from what we do for the house. And we enjoy it tremendously. Right now, I'm having my grandchildren visiting for the summer. They enjoy the garden, they feed the fishes. And our house was part of the Floral Park home tour twice already. So back to 2004, when the first building was permitted and put back up on the backyard, and then another time. So every time there's a lot of interest from the people who visited. And so we plan also after, we have already promised the Floral Park home tour that once it is permitted, then we will open it again. But that would be the extent where, the culture there may attract people. I do not want people to be, there's enough traffic as it is on Santa Clara from people trying to get to the freeway. I certainly do not want to have more traffic that gets in the way of me taking my grandson to school. So no, we're interested to respect the integrity of what the area is about.
Good. I just want to make sure you're aware of the conditions.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Commissioner Wu?
I think there might be some semantics and some cultural differences in the way we explain things. What I think you are saying that you try to be a good neighbor by cooperating with the Floral Park Neighborhood Association in terms of their regular neighborhood event, whether it's a luau, Halloween event, or their classic card, their wine, or their tours of the neighborhood, right?
Right.
Okay. You're not running your own cultural event and your own cultural center, right?
No.
This is your garden.
Right.
So like in a garden, you could pick roses or chrysanthemums.
Yes.
So in the garden part, which is not the house, you haven't modified that. You try to keep it within the keeping of what the structure was before, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what you are doing is because you have such a big yard, you try to make that more livable for meditation, quiet, and having tea, and those are quiet kinds of event. Okay.
That's correct.
You're not, and since you're Catholic, you're not, you
no
don't have the horns and the drums and all that, right? Okay. So I just want to make sure we're clarifying, we're not misunderstanding you when you say you're trying to be cooperative with the neighborhood, that you're doing something in addition to what the neighborhood's doing. Okay. So the neighborhood could run luau's, could run barbecues, could run all sorts of diverse kinds of things, right? And in your backyard, you're choosing to design it the way you're choosing it to do. And hopefully, since they put the limitation on your height and thing, and you have trees and things to kind of shelter the view. I would agree with you, Santa Clara, because I go down there when I drive my daughter to work. Everyone comes down there but it's during certain peak hours, right?
Right.
Yeah. So when there is events that the neighborhood association have, they block the street. They have to take our permit because there's a whole process with lots of paperwork the city requires you to go through the city manager office.
Right.
Right. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same place in terms of what we are communicating. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. Commissioner Benninger?
Thank you. A couple of questions I do have. Is there any possibility of lowering the height of this pagoda by not taking 4 foot off and bring it to under 20 feet?
Commissioner, that the style of the structure, which came to us, has a roof which goes, up, and it has a certain peak. So, and it has, on top, it has a roof decoration as well. This is a style and of the 1800s, and we would like to totally respect that. I don't think we cannot chop the column to be shorter, nor it would be like trying to change the historical house that we live in, because so we are hoping that we can respect those dimensions as we know that we can grow the bamboo just much taller and much thicker to hide it. It's lower than the electrical wires that the Southern California Edison runs. So we've already, for Floral Park homeowner, the board had at one point requested us to clarify by having a pole of exactly that dimension and tie a flag onto it so that they can go by and take a look at it. And so they did. We did do that. And the members of the Floral Park Homeowner Association had the opportunity to do that. Then back on January 17, there was a board meeting in which they withdrew their disapproval of and that is also something that is documented. So they withdrew the disapproval of the original submission because we had moved it to this area that they felt was much more appropriate and would not be such,
I totally agree. Moving it to a new place is far better as far as being seen in a neighborhood. The only question is to get that height down. Because you are 8 foot in the air before you even get to the first floor. So I don't know why we couldn't take 2 or 3 foot off that bottom level and bring it down by that amount. I do agree that the upper structure is part of the significance of it. I wouldn't want to see that change. I totally agree with that. I guess another question is, looking at your property, because I did drive by it today, you actually have a garage area where cars are parked, and that will be in front of this structure. Is there any reason why we couldn't put bamboo on the other side of the garage and hide it from seeing it from Santa Clara or Hillgroves right in that corner? Because it's going to be seen there.
I have a garage in front, but there is no, as it was originally built, there is a driveway, and there is no more. And in front, the Maharaja has placed just a green lawn, and there is no place to grow the bamboo there. So I'm pretty sure that it makes an angle that, there are bamboos that were growing in that angle when it makes a turn. So that could contribute to hide it without having to, and there are some existing bamboos that were planted more recently. So then have not achieved the full height yet, but then so that we could do. And I see your concern about
Yeah, because
this.
it does looking at your layout of the property, it does look like there's considerable distance between the structure and the back of the house, whether it be back of the garage or would that be in back? Because when I stopped my car at the corner, looked at the direction, and Mr. Marjorie is correct, you will see the structure of that location. there, to me, appears that you do have space there to grow something in front of that, whether it be bamboo or whatever, Italian cypress, whatever, but something that we wouldn't see it from the front. That to be one of my concerns.
We already have bamboos there, but we will just make sure that, like I said, it was planted more recently than the other right directly along Santa Clara. So I'm pretty sure that it can grow quite a bit more. It hasn't achieved its height growth maximum yet.
Okay, my only other concern too is this talk of not keeping up the house, the property, outside painting of the structures. Can I ask why that hasn't been done in the past?
Oh, we are doing it continuously, Commissioner. I don't know what it is that, to me, it looks reasonable. So we have very recently, even if you drive and you see the garage, you can clearly see that, sometimes when we had major rain last year, that it was, you have those track of the rain. So we repainted it and completely that side already. Please take a look. So I think that it looks very reasonable.
Well, I'm just kind of concerned because part of approval will say to keep up the maintenance. Well, if you've been doing that, then what is there to do? I don't know if the city knows that or not.
And then I would be happy to invite any of you here to visit the inside of the house. It's perfectly Art Deco. It really respects the Art Nouveau of the house. The way, we haven't changed any of the dimensions inside. We try to replace whatever was there when we moved in so that it stays the same. The painting on the ceiling is still, perfect. And then the covering, the silk covering of the walls, which are things which make it very special, are perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Escamilla?
Yeah, no, thank you for the overall preservation and, for the overall presentation in context. I think it's super important to understand how all these various pieces fit together. I think a lot of the earlier questions that I had around procedure, I think are just kind of important because I do see that, the site of the Maharaja House as being part of its historic character. And one of the reasons it kind of brought up the conversation around review from HRC and having input from the Historic Commission is when I look at your property, you actually are on 2 parcels. So in my mind, you could subdivide that, but add an entirely different house and then actually not impact the site and still not go to Historic Commission under review. That's something that, again, for my reading of the way that we're interpreting not having an HRC review for the site, you could go ahead and do that right now. But instead, you're actually adding historic structures, trying to work with your neighbors. And for me, it's more, I think, a question as to whether or not you're open to at least having more of an in-depth discussion with some of the historic commissioners on things that can be done on preserving the existing home and making sure that all of those details are preserved for the future generations, right? I think that is really important that we try to achieve that balance. I do totally agree with you that if you have that structure that's being moved, that you would not want to chop down, you wouldn't chop the legs off the Eiffel Tower, you wouldn't do this for a structure that was built, or actually in the 1800s around the same time. So I totally understand that, but I just wanted to, at least hear from you, what you've attempted to do to try to work with our local historic preservation community, and it's a big responsibility. This is one of the most important structures in the city. So, it's probably not what you signed up for when you bought the home, but now where you're at now, if you can just talk about where you're at with preserving the home.
So Commissioner Escamilla, I appreciate your comments, and you do bring a very good point, is that it's on 2 lots. And one lot, it has a Maharaja house, and the other lot, that's where we have that antique house in the back, which was legally permitted. But then last year, 2 years ago, we proposed that pavilion to be on that lot, but then the style of it, many of our neighbors, don't appreciate the fact that it's very different. So That's why we decided to put it, where it's hidden by the bamboos. So if you want us to move it and put it on the lot, which already has a Vietnamese house, we could do that. But then it's hard because it has a whole continuous wall. And if we were to, to chop that and then put it may be, that is something which last year looked offensive to the neighbors. So, but then we're open to talk about this if you feel that this is a preferable solution to this.
Yeah, no, and it's not even that. I do actually think that you've come up with probably the best solution to the options available and kind of what you're pursuing, other than, for I think some folks in the audience, no addition or no installation. But again, for me, it was really more the question around the procedure, how we get to review this, and again, because it is such an important structure, I still believe that it should have gone to Historic Commission before coming to us, right? I think that we should have a time and place for people with historic preservation concerns to talk about historic, like anything that impacts the site of a historic structure. I think that that's super important. And I think that no matter what we do today, like we're gonna have a little bit of I would say like a legal, not legal loophole. There's a procedural option for something that I think no one wants right now at this point, and that's what I'm trying to get at, having a procedure in place so we can avoid situations where you decide to sell a home, someone else comes in and they're like going to split it in half, and it's not impacting the historic character of it because it's a different lot and not the structure itself. So that's the sort of situation I'm trying to avoid, and I just want to make sure that whatever we end up with today, that we're all at the end of the day good neighbors with each other and just caring about each other rather than only how do I say this? Being angry with each other. I really don't think that that's the time and that this is the time and place for that sort of situation.
Chair, Vice Chair, if I can just help the meeting a little bit. I think these are all great comments, but as a friendly reminder for the commissioners, this portion is the public hearing where you receive input and you ask specific questions to the applicant. I would encourage you to save deliberative statements or sort of just like position statements, like some that we've recently heard, for after the public hearing's closed and we move on to like a motion being made with discussion.
Yeah, my apologies.
Thank you for the reminder. Commissioner Leo, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I guess my only question is, in thinking about my earlier question about the ADU, the height of the Maharaja house, what do we know the actual height? Is it 24 feet, 26 feet, 28 feet? How high is it?
25 feet.
25 feet? Mm-hmm. So if I read the ADU, our code correctly, the pagoda can be the same height, or the ADU could be the same height as the existing structure under the ADU. We have a 20-foot limit, but it also says, in the code section, it also says the same height as the primary resident. Am I correct or wrong?
And just to clarify, Commissioner, when you say ADU, you're just generally speaking,
I'm
because
talking about an ADU. If she wanted to add an ADU in her backyard, which she could, we as the city couldn't stop her from doing so.
Commissioner Leo, can you please come closer to the mic? Sorry,
sure.
thank you.
So what I'm trying to figure out is, we have a proposal from the applicant that is 24 feet, whatever inch. The ADU says same height as the primary residence, or 20 feet, if I remember the code correctly. If that's the case, the height of what she's proposing, if it were an ADU, she could go even a little higher, 9 more inches. Am I wrong? Am I off? Or
We
not?
will provide a response at the appropriate time, but as.
Okay, but
yeah.
so my question is, so your house, Dr. Q, is 25 feet high? Thank you. That was my only question.
Commissioner, we're not asking to have a 25-foot, but whatever it is historically, we want. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll go next. So I believe it was already raised, but we do know that one of the conditions is to ensure that the house is being maintained and upkept to standards that the Mills Act sets. So thank you for sharing that you have been doing continuous upkeep and that you consider to be reasonable. If the city were to consider otherwise and require additional upkeep and maintenance, is that something that you're able to do? And the second part of that question is, so I know you also stated that the cost of this continual maintenance is much more than the tax savings you're receiving. So knowing that and understanding that, if the city requires a lot of additional maintenance, which we know the cost will add up, is that something that you're able to do as quickly as you can to ensure that all those conditions are met in an appropriate timeline?
Commissioner Ramos, since we live in there, we like to have a nice house, which is also comfortable. There is one exception I would put to that, and I know specifically what exception it is. We looked at having the windows replaced because it's those ancient windows, they leak, they're not soundproof, and then they get deteriorated after a period of time. So we were looking at whether having the identical windows made, and so we shopped everywhere. We found 2 companies. They said they make it for museum or specific, like special houses, which, and then the cost was totally prohibitive, and we could not do that. That part I cannot do. So then we're stuck to living with what we have. So I cannot change the windows that I still have, even if we're freezing to death or too hot, we will have to endure it somehow or run a higher AC bill, whatever that is, because windows of those days, nowadays, I can't even find them at something which is affordable. We were quoted like almost $1 million, so which I don't have. So I have to, something changes or upkeep which are reasonable, I will do. But then again, at that time, the city took us to court for replacing some of the upper story that were in the bedrooms where we have our bedrooms with more updated windows. But then the judge said clearly to the city attorney, you cannot force a homeowner to make repairs which are so expensive that they cannot afford it. So then at that time, the settlement was that we would be able to keep those more comfortable windows, but going for a look which is similar to the look of the antique windows. And this is what we have now. We still have this. I don't have any thought now of replacing the downstairs the downstairs windows, because they pertain to, you can see it from the living room, the library, and the dining room. So we have to do a lot of maintenance to them because they're different. But then, so if you don't make me replace those with identical ones, I'm okay.
Thank you
I
for
can
the
do the
very
rest.
thorough response. So I believe those will be discussions between you and staff as to what is required to ensure the home's historic integrity.
Right.
Are there any last questions or comments? If there aren't, I will be closing the public hearing. Thank you. So the
Thank
public
you.
hearing is now closed. You may take a seat.
Thank you, Chair. If I may have staff answer the response to Commissioner Leo's question on the ADU.
Yes, so now is the time for any additional commissioner comments, deliberations, questions to staff, and then we'll also be taking motions.
Could you put up a drawing of the layout again of the property?
Is this the image you're looking for?
Okay. Is there space between the proposed pagoda and the section would be, I'm sorry, I don't see north on there, so.
North of Santa
is
Clara.
Santa Clara, okay. So therefore, south of the pagoda and between whatever structure that is, it's hard to see from my location. I can't see where the existing bamboo trees are. But is there room between to put bamboo trees between the pagoda and the structure?
So these are the bamboo trees and mature trees that are existing. This is the proposed location. Are you suggesting that it be located somewhere here?
No, I'm talking more towards in front, that you could not see it from the corner of Santa Clara and Heliotrope. So right there, right in that area. Is that structure there? Is that building? What is that?
That's a gazebo.
Okay. Okay, and between that gazebo and the one being proposed, how much distance is that?
less than 10 feet.
Okay, okay. So, and to put a row of bamboo there, you need what, 5 feet?
I don't think you need that much space. So in the conditions of approval, we have written that we would come up with the number of trees, bamboos, and the layout prior to permits being issued. So what we would do is assess the property one more time if this is something that were to be approved, and then come up with a plan to where those bamboos would be planted to provide the most screening possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Escamilla?
No further questions at this point.
Thank you. Commissioner Leo?
Just my ADU question. How's
Sure.
that?
Generally speaking, if someone were to propose a detached accessory dwelling unit, an ADU, they could theoretically go up to 20 feet in height.
So it can't go to the height of the primary residence?
It's only if the ADU is attached to the main residence can it be the same height as the residence. Detached ADUs can be maxed 20 feet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Pham?
We could go all night on size and location, moving it around. I would be willing to move forward with the CPUC and have staff, as we've done with other decisions, monitor and adjust it to comply with the wishes that we have always spoken out about. And we have done that before too, right, Ally?
That's right. In general, when the commission approves a conditional use permit, staff monitors it through the building plan check process to make sure that it conforms with the commission's approvals, and then through construction to make sure that the way that it's built complies with your expectations, and then post-construction monitoring is done by us and the community, as well as our colleagues in code enforcement.
That's why, going back to Pedro's original statement, it was on the alignment with existing CPUC standards and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Pham?
Yes, just one comment. Is there opportunity for us to expand on condition 8? I think that, you know, my thought is this is a private property, so I think the owner's entitled to do what they want to do on their property, but because it does sit in a historically sensitive neighborhood, I'm in agreement with condition 8, making sure that it's used for its intended use. But I also understand that if we kind of leave the language a little bit too loose there, we open opportunities for, you know, there not to be some clarity on what would trigger condition 8. So I'm asking you if there's opportunity to expand on it to make sure that it's very clear what would be defined as inappropriate use, so that the public can be clear that if there were to be uses that are inappropriate to that land use, they have the opportunity to bring that up to the city, and they are protected in a sense from the neighborhood perspective, but it's also for the owners to kind of be clear of what they're protected by, what type of use they're protected by, so that there's no inconsistency and there's no kind of neighborly bickering.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do you have a specific example in mind? Because I think there's there's a fine line. This is a single-family residence, and like you or anyone else is entitled to have people over to their single-family residence for get-togethers, parties. So generally, this is written in a way to avoid kind of commercial activities in general. And I think it would have to be within reasonable understanding of how a single-family residence would operate. I don't think it's reasonable to have over 150 people. Maybe some people do, but over at one specific time. But I think there's that fine line. So if you have a specific example, I think we could entertain a modification for the condition.
Well, I wouldn't suggest anything that's out of the ordinary of our municipal code. I was just, in my mind, kind of using the opportunity in these conditions to outline what normally a resident would need to do to kind of understand what is non-conforming use and what isn't non-conforming use, just because it's such a hotly contested item tonight, where certain people believe that this isn't kind of the correct use for this lot. And so I just want to make sure that there is language that is a bit more broader, just to kind of help clarify when certain things should be brought to the city's attention. And so, because, what if someone's interpreted as, hey, I saw 10 people, so I'm gonna contact the city, when obviously it's not something that is needed to be contacted by the city. Just more expanded language.
Our legal counsel is speaking to our planner.
Thank you, Commissioner. There is a recommendation by our legal counsel that condition number 8 could be modified to eliminate certain language and replace it with other language, specifically the second sentence, the pavilion shall not be designed or intended for public access or viewing. That would be, the pavilion shall not be used for public access or viewing. I think that generally gets to the point of what you're trying to make, where it's ambiguous as to kind of what the case would be specifically.
A point of clarification, so the applicant did state that in the past they have participated in Floral Park's neighborhood tour and that they would intend to do that again. Would that neighborhood tour be considered a public event, and would this language bar their participation?
I think generally it would be considered public event just because members of the public are traversing onto the property. I mean, it is a neighborhood sanctioned event, so I think we would be in sticky territory trying to cut and craft language tonight, but if you have generally a concern that we can try to address with one general statement, we could try to do that. But I think trying to make exceptions for things could get kind of tricky tonight.
Yeah, so I don't have language recommendation, just Commissioner Pham. I am a little bit hesitant about adding guiding language because I do think that we could impose restrictions that we may not be intending for. So with that, if that was a part of it, if that was an amendment, I would not be supporting that language.
No, I agree. My intention isn't to add language. My intention is to kind of further clarify, meaning clarify that the property needs to conform with the subsection that's stated, and kind of expand on what that subsection is. Just, I know that, the property owner can reference that code section independently. I just want to have that code section or kind of the structure of that code section included in the resolution. That's all. Exactly.
It's a private property that is walled. In order to access that, you have to be invited into your yard. So I don't think there is a nature of being a public event. The neighbor association will go for it unless they are part of it.
No, I agree.
That goes under the staff monitoring.
Thank you. So
If I may suggest, the property is in the R1 zoning, and the R1 zone has a list of permitted uses for that residential zone. We could refer to the R1 zoning code section in the code, and I think that will help clarify your concern.
That's the gist of what I'm asking for. It's just additional language, nothing novel, nothing that contradicts the municipal code, but more of an expanded item 8, just so that it's on paper, right? There's no ambiguity there. It's on paper. It's exactly from the municipal code. And if any interested party down the road wants to address it, then it's in black and white. That's all.
That citation can be added.
thank you, Commissioner Pham. Would you like to entertain a motion with that amendment?
Yes.
I'm ready to move the question if there's no other discussions.
So Commissioner Pham will be making a motion. We'll be able to continue discussion with that motion on the floor.
Look at what resolution this is. Right, I make a motion to approve conditional use permit number 2022-06 with the condition of an expanded Section 8 conditional of approvals to include language that matches the municipal code on the appropriate usage for an R1 zone. And everything else as condition.
Thank you, Commissioner Pham. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. Are there any additional comments from the commission before we go to a vote?
Yeah, no, I definitely understand kind of where we're at. Like I said, I really would have loved HRC input. We got at least two commissioners down here, and technically with myself a third. But it is just kind of worrying if we don't treat the site as part of the character defining features for the purpose of analysis. So it's just, I still feel like we're missing a little bit of additional analysis that this body should have. But it seems like we're ready to make a decision. So that's all I have.
Well, I'd just like to add, we can extend this and have that HR review and feedback to us. Do you want to propose that?
That would need to be a sub-motion.
Yeah.
We have a motion on the floor. Any other commissioners are able to introduce a sub-motion, and we would have to vote on that sub-motion before going to the initial motion.
Yeah. I guess I would just ask if folks are open to it. I definitely don't want to belabor if we don't have a majority up here, but.
Chair, Vice Chair.
Go ahead.
My
Commissioner
understanding is if we were to continue this, the commissioner would need to provide findings for why we would be continuing this item.
Yeah, and the findings would be specifically to just do the analysis on the view corridor and the Mills Act question that came up as to whether or not the applicability of the Mills Act should continue. I think that was like those are the two questions I had in my mind, and then the third one being whether or not the site is being impacted by the addition of the structure. So if we're seeing the site itself as part of the character defining features, that is an open question to me. I have my own views on it, and like I said, I don't necessarily think this body will be held to that standard, but we should be reviewing, or the HRC should be reviewing major modifications to landmark sites. I think that that's just like a good base level, like, hey, we have a landmark property, we should probably send it to HRC for initial input, or at least for a discussion to be then conveyed to Planning Commission prior to having this meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Escamilla. We're going to go to legal counsel for a second.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, thank you. Just a couple of points. First of all, with respect to the compliance with the Mills Act contract, that one stands on its own. Either it's in compliance with the Mills Act contract and the Mills Act regulations that we have in the municipal code, or it's not. But that can be handled separately from what you're doing tonight. What you have before you tonight is a conditional use permit to allow a structure that's over 15 feet in height, an accessory structure that's over 15 in height. That is the purview of what you're looking at tonight. Now, I've heard a couple of comments about, well, maybe we should send it to HRC. Staff in the staff report has explained why they are recommending that that's not something that you don't have to do. I can't tell you that you can't, but I will tell you that it does cause concerns. Number one, there is no provision for advisory opinions or advisory reviews by the HRC, at least anywhere that I can find in the code. So that's number one. Number two, I think anytime that you deviate from established procedures, you create a precedent. And anytime you create a precedent, I think you want to be careful about that, unless you're going to create that precedent and follow it every single time. Because if you don't, the implication is that perhaps you give the applicant a claim that you're treating this application differently than all the others. So you want to be careful about that. But I can't tell you that you can't, okay? But finally, and I think probably most importantly, is even if you did send it to the HRC, they're looking at the exact same information that you are, which is that staff's recommendation to you is that this accessory structure is not part of the main structure. It doesn't have its own, doesn't retain its own historic significance. And in fact, it's consistent, and I think Pedro read those into the record earlier tonight, it's consistent with the design guidelines that you have for accessory structures in historic districts. And that's that these buildings are typically utilitarian, need not attempt to incorporate every level of detail of the main structure, and whenever possible, they should be located out of view of the street. That's basically the same guidance that they would give the HRC if you did send this over to the HRC. So I just wanted to make those points for you.
Thank you. So with that, I'd like to once again ask, is there a sub-motion that anybody would like to make? You can make it and see if you have the votes, and then we revert to the original motion if we don't.
Might I add, we also went through this with the previous commission. You know, the location, lot split, all these other options. It went back to the simplicity of the CPUC.
All right, and I think it's we had three commissioners that were here for the last discussion, right? So that, yeah, I guess that's the other thing, right? This is maybe your third or fourth time seeing this, and my first, and Carl's first probably. I guess I just want to make sure that, like, yeah, we have a legal footing, and there are specific findings that we'd be asking the HRC to review. So again, for me, like right now, our initial kind of attempt to kind of get to putting this project or getting this project through and approving the CUP is we're essentially blocking off the entire viewscape from Santa Clara and accepting that that is a lost viewscape, right? We have a view from the Santa Clara side that effectively now is we can't see the house, so we're not losing anything, but we're accepting the fact that it's not visible from that perspective, and that the main focus of the Maharaja House and the facade that we want to protect is really on heliotrope. But that's the main segment. We want to make sure that the landscaping's in place, and we're essentially saying that this is a lost view corridor. And that we accept that as part of the structure. And again, I just think that that is something that the HRC would typically weigh in on the view corridor aspect of it. I personally like the pagoda. I don't find any issue with it, but I do find an issue with having this discussion prior to HRC. I guess that's really kind of where I'm at. So it's not necessarily even the merits of the particulars with the site, it's the procedurally, do we consider the site itself to be part of the historic character, and is that, if we do not have purview over that, isn't that not the purview of HRC? So they should weigh in at least on the site conditions at some point in the process. That's kind of where I'm at. And
I'd like to speak in support of that, because I think it is important that this is a historical site, and that we do have a commission that should have their input as to what they think. And so to ask to your question, is this a standard I want to set any future historical site come in front of us? Yes, I do. I also strongly feel that we could hide the structure. And again, I'm not against the structure. I think it's a very beautiful structure. And the fact you have two other items there that all go back to the 1800s, fantastic. I think that's very neat. But I do think that we could put a row of bamboo in front of that, so it totally eliminates the possibility of seeing it from the streets. And so that's why I think the HRC could come back and tell us.
So just, I want to ask quick question to staff, and then I'll ask if there's a sub-motion on the floor. So staff, I think I heard the applicant say, and I don't want to reopen the public hearing if I don't have to, but I think I heard the applicant say that they have recently planted bamboo, that it is growing, and that it would cover the structure from the front side.
Can I speak against that first?
Well, this is a question for staff. I just want to see if there's an answer.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I heard that as well. So
Okay.
yes.
So Commissioner Benninger, Commissioner Scamilla, if those were concerns, we've heard that bamboo is growing and would cover that side.
Right, and again, it's not, for me, not so much the concern whether or not the bamboo will cover it. In fact, if it's to be installed, I'm actually okay with it being slightly visible from certain angles, but it's more the site itself, if it's not being treated like a historic, should the site itself be treated like a historic resource and analyzed by the HRC to see whether or not the HRC approves it? I do think that that's a...
So Commissioner Scamilla, Commissioner Benninger, will either of you be proposing a sub-motion? That's all we can really do. It's either sub-motion or we go with the original motion, so.
So I guess I'll try to craft this if at all possible. Yeah, no, it's a little mess I dug myself into here, right? So I would recommend that we, oh my gosh, so that we, and I don't even know how, because we usually would just continue. What is, like, do we have any sort of established language for recommending additional input from another deliberative body, because I don't think I've seen this before. And that's the part I'm struggling with, is how to actually structure this.
Certainly, the commission, when it has open questions that are relevant to the project, are entitled to get those questions answered. We believe the staff has provided the evidence that are necessary and the information that are necessary for consideration of this project under your purview. That's what we have as a staff report presented to you. That's what our legal counsel has indicated. If you were to look at continuing and request to direct this to the HRC for their review, you would have to cite for the staff and make the finding of what kind of information is lacking, what are you looking for that has not been answered already, so that then the HRC would at least be, for the staff, we would determine whether or not it's even something that can go to the HRC. But that would have to be articulated to us.
Okay, so I guess the articulation is this, and let's see if this goes.
Madam Chair?
Oh,
So
Point
we're
of
going to
order.
allow for a submotion to made. We'll then take a vote. If
Point
that
of order.
submotion
We have
fails.
heard tonight several times from the city
Commissioner Wu,
attorney.
point of order, we're going to take the submotion, vote on it, and then revert to the original motion. Thank you. Commissioner Escamilla?
We're giving up our authority.
Commissioner Wu, he's able to make a anybody is able to make a submotion. If that submotion fails, we will go back to the original motion. Thank you. Commissioner Escamilla?
so the sub-motion would be to continue the item pending review from the Historic Resource Commission to determine whether, in the opinion of the Historic Resource Commission, the item before us today negatively impacts or has any impact on the view corridor for the Maharaja House. That would be the question to be addressed before coming back to this body.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. So we'll now be taking a vote on,
I just, as a, sorry, we're the practitioners, so I have to ask for clarity for the case planner. So it gets presented hypothetically to the HRC for evaluation of impacts on the viewshed. So what is the application? What's the outcome? What's the sort of deliverable to the Planning Commission that is necessary for that?
Yeah, no, so for us, I guess it would be, I don't know that we do straw polls or anything where it's just a vote on whether or not, in the HRC's opinion, there is no impact or there is no negative impact to the historic character and quality of the building and site. Or I guess the historic resources would be the phrase I would want to use.
As much as I can understand the issues and the concern, and I totally relate to what the commission's wanting to do. Unfortunately, our current ordinance does not consider the site as part of the historical aspect of the designation. The survey done for the site dealt strictly with the building. While I feel where the commission wants to go, and if our code were to be changed, could be very appropriate, because I think the setting, in my opinion, does have an impact as well. However, legally, from the current regulations of what we have, it doesn't support what you're asking. And we would have a challenge of bringing an application to the HRC in terms of the application itself, because it doesn't require it.
And if I may, Vice Chair, I think what I would recommend, and if the commission is interested in the sub-motion, is identifying, I guess, what sort of specific finding that the staff has made in the resolution, the one of 5 findings that the HRC's determination or opinion would kind of affect the Planning Commission's decision. So if you get feedback, how would that change your decision that the findings are either consistent or inconsistent, and either we can approve it or deny it based on that? So I think that's something for you to consider. And I don't know that any one of those findings addresses historic setting, really, so.
Manager, can I have 5 minutes to confer with staff about
yes,
that
we'll
potential
be
motion?
taking a 5-minute recess.
Citation. I've been asked
Hi, everyone. We will be reconvening the meeting. So our recess is now over. We're going to go back to see if we have a submotion. Commissioner Escamilla?
Yeah, so with the submotion, I'd like to see if we can continue this item and allow for a work study session at the HRC on this, and I'd like to, I guess, assign myself to report back to the Planning Commission the discussion from that meeting. So right now, I'm currently the HRC representative for the Planning Commission, so I believe that would give us the opportunity to discuss the item with the full Historic Commission and then report back their recommendations and findings. And then that would essentially be, it looks like, till the September meeting of the HRC, and coming back in the first meeting of Planning Commission in September.
So we need a date certain for
Date
that?
certain, yeah.
And just to clarify, there are no findings that they can give us because this is purely advisory. All they're doing is giving input to the commissioner who is the liaison to the HRC. And so the commissioner would then bring back sort of a summary of the comments that he heard at that meeting and provide you with that information.
So do we need that submotion to be restated without the word findings?
Yeah, but I guess we could strike that from the submotion, okay.
Just to clarify some dates, so the next regularly scheduled HRC meeting is Thursday, September 5th, and then the next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting is Monday, September 9th. So in this structure, it would go to HRC on the 5th and then come back for a continued continued item on the agenda on September 9th.
So the motion would be to continue the item to September the 9th and direct staff to agendize this item for discussion and input to be given to the commissioner, and then he would report back to you as to that.
Mr. City Attorney, is it normal to appoint an ambassador to negotiate on behalf of the Planning Commission?
No, my understanding, though, is that the commissioner is already designated as the liaison to the HRC.
Can you repeat that again?
It's my understanding that the commissioner is already designated as a liaison.
So what standing would that have in Atlanta courts?
The commissioner was selected by this commission to represent the Planning Commission's seat on the HRC. So Commissioner Escamilla is that appointed representative.
But does he represent all the views?
So Commissioner Escamilla is just to collect input and bring it back to us. He won't be representing the views we shared tonight. He'll just be collecting input.
It would be just another piece of information that you have in addition to the staff report and everything else. The public hearing remains open, so.
But for the record, we have postponed this for 2 years already.
Right.
With the same kind of dialogue that has gone on. And as the city attorney pointed out, it's unnecessary to go through the HRC. I mean, they often overstep their bound anyway. I mean, do
Thank
we
you,
get to say
Commissioner Wu.
anything?
So we currently have a submotion. We don't have a second yet. Do we have a
All right,
second?
second.
Thank you, Carl Benninger. I'm going to, Commissioner Benninger, I will be calling the vote. So we are now voting on the submotion. Recording Secretary, may you please take roll call? Thank you.
Commissioner Benninger?
Yes.
Commissioner Escamilla?
Aye.
Commissioner Leo?
No.
Commissioner Pham?
No.
Commissioner Wu?
No.
Vice Chair Ramos?
Aye.
Chair Oliva?
Fails.
Motion fails with Chair Oliva absent.
Thank you. So with that submotion failing, we revert back to our original motion with Commissioner Pham's friendly amendment that he'll be restating.
I move to approve conditional use permit number 2022-06 as condition with an additional amendment to expand on condition number 8 to incorporate language from the municipal code to designate the approved usage of the respective zoning for this lot.
Thank you. We had Commissioner Wu second earlier, and I'll be calling the vote. Recording Secretary, may you please take roll call?
Commissioner Benninger?
No.
Commissioner Escamilla?
Nope.
Commissioner Leo?
Aye.
Commissioner Pham?
Aye.
Commissioner Wu?
Aye.
Vice Chair Ramos?
Aye.
Motion approved by majority vote with Commissioner Benninger and Commissioner Escamilla dissenting and Chair Oliva absent.
Thank you. We will now be going back to item number 1. This is the time and place for zoning ordinance amendment number 2023-02, amending sections 41-54.5 and 41-610.5 of the Santa Ana Municipal Code to amend the city's electric fences standards and requirements, which include modifications to expand the eligibility for sites to ensure consistency with the California Civil Code Section 835. The applicant has requested to continue the item to the September 9th, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion to approve continuing this matter to September 9th, 2024?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Leo. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Benninger. Secretary, please call for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Benninger?
Aye.
Commissioner Escamilla?
I'm sorry, I actually missed that like first statement.
We're continuing.
Was that?
Ask for continuance.
Applicant request.
Okay, yes.
Commissioner Leo?
Aye.
Commissioner Pham?
Aye.
Commissioner Wu?
No, I want to vote.
Commissioner Wu, we're voting on a continuation that the applicant requested. Would you like to restate your vote?
This is a
I
staff.
vote no on the continuation of this item, right, to the next
Yes.
meeting?
You don't want to
No,
continue?
no.
No, we're on item 1, Commissioner Wu.
Oh, the electric fence. Okay,
Commissioner Wu?
I will agree, yes.
Vice Chair Ramos?
Aye.
Chair Oliva? Motion approved by majority vote with Chair Oliva absent.
Thank you. We're moving on to item number 2. This is the time and place for conditional use permit number 2024-11 for the property located at 730 North Poinsettia Street, Unit A, located within the Transit Zoning Code. Before we begin, do any commissioners have anything they wish to disclose with regards to this matter? So I do have a disclosure. I live within 1,000 feet, but that will not be impacting any decisions I make tonight. Now we'll have Matthew Kilroy providing a brief presentation.
Just to clarify, Madam Chair, you live more than 500 feet, but less than 1,000 feet?
Correct. I live more than 500 feet and just less than 1,000 feet. Mr. Kilroy, go ahead.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for welcoming me. To sum up, this item before you, Le Brisket Hut is requesting approval of conditional use permit number 2024-11 to allow the sale of beer and wine for on-premises consumption at a new eating establishment located at 730 North Poinsettia Street, Unit A. Staff is recommending the adoption of a resolution approving this CUP as conditioned. The site is located within the general plan land use designation as urban neighborhood. The site's zoning classification is for the Transit Zoning Code SD84 Urban Neighborhood 2. The surrounding land uses include residential, industrial uses to the north, a live-work development to the east, industrial to the south, and a multifamily residence to the west. On July 8th, 2024, the applicant submitted the subject application to the Planning Division to allow the sale of beer and wine for on-premises consumption in order to provide an additional service to its customers. In 2019, the buildings were approved for a facade and tenant interior renovations to accommodate an eating establishment. Le Brisket Hut will be the first eating establishment to occupy Unit A. Le Brisket Hut is to be located within a 1,120 square foot tenant space within a 4,000 square foot multi-tenant commercial Quonset hut building and a 960 square foot outdoor dining patio located near the southwest corner of Civic Center Drive and Poinsettia Street. The establishment will accommodate up to 40 patrons within the indoor dining area and 48 patrons in the outdoor dining area, with no live entertainment being requested at this time. Business owners Brenda and Daniel Castillo are food entrepreneurs and have an established record of experience of operating food establishments. Together, they operate Heritage Barbecue, restaurant in San Juan Capistrano. The proposed eating establishment will offer a fusion of Mexican street food with Texas barbecue paired with an offering of natural wines, and will operate from breakfast to evening dining. This is a site photo of the eastern elevations and main entrance of the existing Unit A tenant space. This is a site plan of the subject property. This is the floor plan. As shown, the alcohol display will take up only a small fraction of the floor space, 30 square feet in total, which is less than the allotted 5% maximum. This is a map of ABC licenses in the project vicinity. So based on the analysis of the project, the Planning Division has found that the subject site is consistent with the goals and objectives found in the land use element of the general plan. It is located in a commercially acceptable zone, neighbors other commercial uses, and is not located in the close proximity to any parks or playgrounds. The property is adjacent to both single and multifamily residences. However, it is located in the SD84 zone, which was created with the intention for these types of land uses to coexist in close proximity. Furthermore, the project is located in an urban neighborhood, general plan use, land use designation, which does allow for this development of a semi-urban village that are well connected to schools, parks, and neighborhood, serving commercial and residential uses side by side that are also well connected to public transportation. The subject site is within walking distance in the Santa Ana Regional Transportation Center, which will also be one of the Orange County streetcars stops. Moreover, the operational standards applicable to the ABC license and proposed conditions of approval will mitigate any potential impacts created by the use and to ensure that the use will not negatively affect the surrounding community. According to the Santa Ana Police Department crime statistics, they found that it is within police grid number 185. It ranked 3 out of 102, which is in the second percentile, which is within the 20th percent threshold established by the state for high crime. With that being said, the Santa Ana Police Department is satisfied that the operational standards and conditions of approval will mitigate any potential impacts to the surrounding community and does not oppose granting of the CUP. Conditions of approval, property maintenance agreement, and standards in the Santa Ana Municipal Code will address any potential negative impacts. In accordance with the California CEQA and the CEQA guidelines, the project is categorically exempt from further review, and there's no fiscal impact associated with this action. Staff recommends the adoption of a resolution approving CUP number 2024-11 as conditioned. Staff, as well as property owner Dana Harvey and business owners Brenda and Daniel Castillo, are available to answer any outstanding questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the commission have any comments or questions for staff? Commissioner Wu?
Where is the parking for this facility?
So parking, there are some on site, but mostly it'll be street parking. And it is within close walking distance. It's a 5-minute walk to the train station. And it will also be close in proximity to the Orange County streetcar.
So this is one of those establishments that is designed to trade on local traffic, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Local traffic, people that live in the neighborhood. You know, you're walking your dog, you drop by for a quick one, and you go home.
Yes, that is the intention of SD84 and as well as this development, yes.
Commissioner Pham?
No questions.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for staff?
Yes, the operational hours, what are we approving tonight?
Yeah, so the operational hours will be Monday through Sunday from 8 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night.
And just for my clarification, when we approve that, the liquor, if sometime in the future they want to go to midnight, would they have to come back for a CPU to change the liquor permit?
They would have to modify the hours, yes.
So why not just move it to midnight, which keeps us within the city standards?
The commission can certainly have that option if it wants to change the staff's recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing now. Would the applicant like to speak on the matter?
Hello, good evening. My name is Daniel Castillo. I just want to say, first and foremost, La Brisket Hut is an eatery. My wife and I both own and operate our family business, Heritage Barbecue in San Juan Capistrano. We have been in business for 4 years. In those 4 years, we have received the honor of a Michelin Bib Gourmand from the Michelin Guide 4 years in a row. Best New Restaurant, Orange County Register, 2021. Best Restaurant, OC Register, 2022. LA Times 101 Best Restaurants, number 19. The following year, number 17. Last year, we opened a brewery in Oceanside, California. Both operations have received 0 problems due to alcoholic consumption. We hope to employ within the community. We took a huge gamble opening in the middle of the pandemic in 2020, and we have thrived. People ask us why we chose Santa Ana to open a new concept. We chose Santa Ana because I was born here. The hospital that I was born in was called Mercy Hospital, which is not here anymore. My wife Brenda was raised here in Washington Square. Our family lives here. We like to take chances. We took a huge gamble opening a restaurant during the height of the pandemic, but we feel like we're coming full circle opening in our hometown. Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
No,
Well-
just thank you.
We'll take
Yes.
questions after we receive any other public comment there might be. Recording secretary, do we have any other public comments?
We have received public comment prior to the 3:30 PM deadline that has been distributed to the commission and posted online. If you're attending this meeting in person and would like to comment on this item, please fill out a request to speak form and turn it into the secretary. If you're participating via Zoom and would like to comment on this item, please select the hand icon and unmute yourself. If you're calling in and would like to comment on this item, please dial 9 and then 6 to unmute yourself. We do not have any speakers on Zoom.
Thank you. Now we can take any questions or comments from commissioners.
I just want to know whether they're going to have carry out.
I'm sorry?
Carry out? Do we have carry out?
Absolutely.
You got my mouth watering already.
And I expect to see you there, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Love the story in the background. And yeah, I think we're going to make the modification to allow you, if you want, to stay open that extra hour. It's going to be up to you operationally, but, you know.
Yeah, I think we're going to kind of see how things look at that hour around the area.
Yeah,
Then
it's
we'll
not too
make that
bad.
call.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
I've been to both locations. Outstanding. I'm glad you picked Santa Ana to come back to.
Thank you.
I've lived here for so long and through so many things that your investment is really important.
I appreciate
Put Santa
that.
Ana on the map.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward, Commissioner Pham?
How soon, after we approve this CPUC, will you start serving beer?
We're hoping to get open by October. That's what we're hoping for.
And will you be serving any Irish beer
You know,
or Japanese beer?
you know, the kind of the alcohol part is kind
Oh,
of in
okay,
the.
you mix drinks.
No. What I was trying to say was that it's kind of in the background of what we really want to do there because we're an eatery. But the wine is kind of what we want to push, especially La Brisket Hut. The name comes from. It's kind of a play on the area being a French Park. So we just thought that would be kind of fun. So we're definitely going to be doing this cool fusion with a little bit of like French flair in there and serving
So the
wine.
beverage will enhance the meal selection.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, great. Are you serving duck?
Tongue?
Duck.
Oh, duck. No, but we do serve duck at Heritage Barbecue. But that's a good idea. We've done it for Christmas.
Commissioner Pham?
No comment. It sounds like everyone's said everything that needs to be said. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you also for picking Santana and for picking my neighborhood.
Thank you.
So with that, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve this matter?
I will make that motion that we approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, can you please call for a roll call vote?
Commissioner Benninger?
Aye.
Commissioner Escamilla,
Aye.
Commissioner Leo,
Aye.
Commissioner Pham,
Aye.
Commissioner Wu,
Aye.
Vice Chair Ramos,
Aye.
Chair Oliva. Motion approved by majority vote with Chair Oliva absent.
Thank you. Congratulations. We're going to move on to staff comments.
I don't have anything, but our planning manager, Ali, would like to provide the commission with an update.
Yeah, thank you, commissioners. Just wanted for anyone who's listening to discuss the zoning code update process. So the next form of outreach will take place with development of what's called story maps online, which would be basically a portal on the web where individuals want to learn more about the zoning code update process can submit comments electronically. And then also we'll be hosting two workshops and community outreach forums aimed at the business community. So both small, hard to reach small businesses as well as standard sized businesses in the community. So be on the lookout for that. And as always, if you know any interested parties who want to provide comments, please contact Siri Champion. She's the senior planner leading the effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the commission have any comments or questions for staff? Commissioner Wu?
I had a chance to reconnect with the Building Healthy Community, Santa Ana was building a healthy community, and saw Yuri there and a lot of old faces from 10 years ago, over 10 years ago when we were just forming it. And I had a chance to have lunch there with Justin, and we were talking about housing and city planning and economic development, and it goes hand in hand with building the city from the bottom up and giving voice to those that are marginalized and at the bottom end of the economic spectrum. At the same time, I think there needs to be a better emphasis on creating more jobs. And this is an example how the job is emerging from the entrepreneurship of those that lived in the city, and they're willing to reinvest again. And it seems like we have the right policies in place. And as we keep going around and encounter our decisions out there in the public, I assure you, I'm glad we have our the kind of staffing we do have to guide us through these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. Are there any other comments? Commissioner Benninger?
Just want to wish everybody a happy Labor Day, and kids are back in school today. That's good.
Great. Well, with that, first, thank you all for entertaining my chairing tonight. And our next regular meeting is scheduled for September 9th, 2024, 5:30 p.m. in the council chambers.